maturity now, or now, or now, or now. It's a pretty point. Even Occam's razor will whittle that away. I'm speaking ex officio, pay no attention.
What razor?
Look, it runs on lighter fuel.
The things they think of.
You really existed, you see.
Beg your pardon?
Oh, he's not talking to you.
He's looking at me.
He's looking rude.
It may be asked, what is this man to us? Why strain ourselves trying to squeeze a little juice out of this barren life? What are we trying to grind on this stone?
It's a good question. Think of all the great lives crying out to be done. George William Bulkhead, for instance, who spent a long and wretched life making things out of bits of metal and then trying to invent a use for them. A man so poverty-stricken, he was obliged to live entirely on biscuits, which he bought in 14-pound tins so as to provide himself with the tin plate, and who, after 70 years of fruitless endeavor and indigestion, was about to cast his final construction onto the great pile in his backyard when he leapt to his feet and emitted his now famous cry, "Gravity trip feet, praise be to God!" and immediately dropped dead with the shock, leaving no clue whatsoever to his marvelous discovery, such that it would have been lost forever if the idea hadn't occurred some 60 years later, as he sat in his perfumed bath to the young dilettante Thurl, who sold it for a tremendous sum, of which he gave half to his favorite mistress for services rendered. A quarter also for services rendered, although there the resemblance ends, to provide a lifetime sale of oats to his hunters in case he should die selling the pox, which was not unlikely, and which, in fact, he did, much to the dismay of not only his favorite mistress, but all the others, and a quarter to down candles to a nearby nunnery, since he'd been newly converted as soon as the pox was on him, in fact, on leaving. Now we're back to George William Bulkhead. Nothing to show. A lifetime's devotion to the cause of practical science, but a yard full of junk and 100 weight and a half of broken oval Marys. Life is very sad.
Beth?
If I were not obsessed with him, he still would have existed. This is the point, you see. The obsession isn't mine. I didn't invent him. He really existed. On purpose. Let's not pretend this phenomenon, which began, let's say, with a mother's anguish on a hot June night in 1857 and ended with a spadeful of earth on a coffin in 1942. Let's not pretend it was an accident. 84 years this creature spent pushing air in and out of his body. You think that's nothing? Think of the mind, then. Think of the mind in that little space, in that little brain, Stomford like a genie in a bottle. Think of it. Think of it. It doesn't take much effort. It's the same for us. Never mind putting a fine point on it. It's the same for us. We're trapped in here. You see, this is the only thing that matters. Never mind the color line, never mind the H-bomb. It doesn't matter. It's small. It's irrelevant. There is only one thing worth thinking about. Only one thing worth understanding, and that is that I am a mind trapped in 1,200 grams of brain, trapped in a quarter-inch of skull, and the only key to this prison is death. No matter how much I reach out towards you or you towards me, we are still trapped in our minds as before. We can pretend, we can fall in love or join the same party. It makes no difference. Is it any consolation that we're all in the same boat?
What?
You know your way around. I mean, you know what's what.
I do me best.
Do you think I ought to change the color of my lipstick?
Not interested, huh?
Oh, no. Of course, it's a bit difficult when you don't know what the hell they're talking about.
He's talking about you.
Me?
He's saying that even if you were to fall in love with him, for you it would be impossible.
Why? What's wrong with him? Oh. What about my lips?
Superb.
One thing about you, at least you're not dead.
I can prove it.
Ow, 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 ow. I've got cramp. This is it then. We're trapped in our minds as he was. We live out our lives in a dungeon as he did. But for most of the time we forget about it. We have other things to do. We nod, touch hands, gesticulate, dance the ritual dance, but he, you see, had no such pretense. His environment was not a cloak, but a reflection, a cell where he dwelt alone, always alone. The manner of his existence was opposing of the question we managed to avoid. Who or what is it that is so obsessed with me that he makes me live out my long life in this dank, slowly decaying cell to no apparent purpose? Or am I merely the reflection of an obsession? An abandoned experiment, abandoned and forgotten.
What conclusion did you reach?
He died. What more do you want?
How still it is. Time passes, the world turns. We age quietly. Fallout settles soundlessly like a fairy tale. Think of the turmoil the world must be in at this very moment. Bombs going off in suitcases, abortions in bed-sitting rooms, sweating Sicilians tunneling madly under suburban banks, disarmament negotiations breaking down, priests repairing torn hassocks and cassocs, rape, seduction, murder, regret, remorse, and repetition. And yet here we sit, in this little haven of peace, well-fed, well-clad, civilized, deodorized, middle class, and with impeccable consciences. May I suggest a moment of silence to whoever made us what we are?
Mr. Rudge, while I don't wish to disparage your efforts, after all, I'm only a lowly actor, and it goes without saying that an actor's really the last person you would expect to know what a play's about. I mean, you might as well expect a violin string to explain the finer points of a concerto. We're so much dramatic catgut.
Do you want something?
I'm only a simple actor, Mr. Rudge, with only half a lifetime's experience behind me. And I know that counts for nothing compared with the ability to string two sentences together.
I disagree.
God.
You were saying?
I was being ironical.
Oh, so you think it does count for nothing?
No, doesn't.
Doesn't count for nothing.
Does count for something.
You think so? Well, I'll see what I can do for you.
I say this. If you can't handle your non-sequiturs, leave the blood offense alone. If you gotta handle them like snakes, see, only backwards. Hang on to the tail and hang on tight. The head don't matter, you just let it dangle. That's where folks slip up. They grab up on the head, the tail whips all round, and there is the result. Paralysis of the brain.
Let me try it another way. Look, I appreciate what you're trying to do here. I just feel that, I feel that we're gonna have the intermission on us before we know where we are.
He's right, you know. I distinctly heard the jig of the clock a moment ago.
Look, I have an idea about this. Okay, we start with the beard, with the beard and the hut and Fanny Bell.
Do you ever feel like the world's a gigantic spider web? A single great spider web, and we are all the flies. We see another creature like ourselves struggling in another corner of the web, and we say, let us examine this creature in its death throes. Let us study the vibrations of the strand of web on which it twists and turns, trying to free itself. Note down and analyze the frequencies of each imprisoning thread. But the vibrations aren't only caused by this creature. They belong to all the struggling individuals. And us. To explain one, we have to explain all in one tremendous, all-embracing equation. But it's not even as simple as that, you see, because this web is three-dimensional in space and three-dimensional in time. Its anchors are fixed at the ends of the universe, at the single amorphous unity of space and time, being and non-being, as it breaks like a great white wave on a rock into a million colored fragments. The
I have my integrity as an actor to consider.
To hell with actors! Go home! Send them all home!
They won't go.
To drop the curtain!
There is no curtain.
You see? We're trapped in the web, and you want explanations. Why don't you go and ask the spider?
What are we gonna do?
If he gets depressed, don't worry about it. Reverend Master! He's in spiritual coma.
A what?
Don't worry about it. Listen, do you want the real truth about the hermit of Great Canfield?
I'm not likely to get it from you.
Very well, if you're not interested.
Of course I'm damn well interested.
Good. After deliberate thought, I find the key to your character to be summed up quite shortly. The truth is always simple. Now, let me see, how can I put it?
Truth of God.
No, not quite. You see, it was like this. Being, in fact, like most recluses, a misogynist and a misanthrope, petrified of puberty into a state of chronic, crooked adolescence by a pathological loathing for the cravings of his soft human shell. A quite normal textbook case, in fact, of the paranoid schizophrenic with repressed homosexual tendencies.
No, objection!
You, quite naturally, like an aberrant dung beetle, took refuge from the filth of your biological environment by burrowing deeper into it. The consequence was...
No, objection! You might think it clever to liken one of God's creatures to a dung beetle.
My dear sir, they too are God's creatures.
What's he got against dung beetles? They can't help the way they live.
Of course they can't. So why persecute them?
Love your neighbor, that's what I always say.
Even if he's only a...
Dung beetle.
We all have our parts to play.
Even if it is only a matter of...
Rolling balls of dung from one place to another.
I bet if you were a dung beetle, you'd think yourself pretty darn important.
Just as we do, at least they conserve nature.
Where would the nitrogen cycle be without the...
Dung beetle, that's what I like to know.
You wouldn't be able to cross the field.
For fear of the consequences, live and let live.
That's my motto. They have mothers like the rest of us.
Dung beetles are only human.
If not more so.
Let us break into song. All things bright and beautiful, all creatures great and small. Twixt dung beetles and dung beetles.
Stop! Listen, you want the real truth about the hermit of Great Canfield? I have it.
You do?
Naturally, you see. How can I put it?
Never mind with words.
Let me help. He was,
In a manner of speaking,
You mean sort of.
Oh,
no.
I wouldn't say that.
not in the least as far as I'm concerned.
More,
You're driving me mad!
That was it.
that's the word I wanted.
It'll do as a first approximation, but that, of course, was only half of the story.
Intermission.
Enter what?
It's your coffee.
Oh, lovely.
Permit me to escort you.